Converting between datetime, timestamp and datetime64. How do I convert a numpy.datetime64 object to a datetime.datetime or timestamp? In the following code, I create a datetime, timestamp and datetime64 objects. Note, it's easy to get the datetime from the timestamp. But how do we extract the datetime or timestamp from a numpy.datetime64, DT64? Update. A somewhat nasty example in my dataset, perhaps the motivating example, seems to be
to convert numpy.datetime64 to datetime object that represents time in UTC on numpy 1.8. The above example assumes that a naive datetime object is interpreted by np.datetime64 as time in UTC. To convert datetime to np.datetime64 and back, numpy 1.6. It works both on a single np.datetime64 object and a numpy array of np.datetime64. Think of np.datetime64 the same way you would about np.int8, np.int16, etc. and apply the same methods to convert between Python objects such as int, datetime and corresponding numpy objects. Your nasty example works correctly. I can reproduce the long value on numpy 1.8.0 installed as the same example. It returns long because for numpy.datetime64 type.astype datetime is equivalent to .astype object that returns Python integer, long, on numpy 1.8. To get datetime object you could to get datetime64 that uses seconds directly. The numpy docs say that the datetime API is experimental and may change in future numpy versions.
You can just use the pd.timestamp constructor. The following diagram may be useful for this and related questions.
Welcome to hell. You can just pass a datetime64 object to pandas.timestamp. I noticed that this doesn't work right though in numpy 1.6.1. Also, pandas.to_datetime can be used. This is off of the dev version, haven't checked v0.9.1.
I think there could be a more consolidated effort and an answer to better explain the relationship between Python's datetime module, numpy's datetime64/timedelta64 and pandas timestamp/timedelta objects. The datetime standard library of Python. The datetime standard library has four main objects. Time, only time, measured in hours, minutes, seconds and microseconds. Date, only year, month and day. Datetime, all components of time and date. Time delta, an amount of time with maximum unit of days. Create these four objects. numpy's datetime64 and timedelta64 objects. Numpy has no separate date and time objects, just a single datetime64 object to represent a single moment in time. The datetime module's datetime object has microsecond precision, 1/1,000,000th of a second. numpy's datetime64 object allows you to set its precision from hours all the way to attoseconds, 10⁻18. Its constructor is more flexible and can take a variety of inputs. Construct numpy's datetime64 and timedelta64 objects. Pass an integer with a string for the units. See all units here. It gets converted to that many units after the Unix epoch, Jan 1, 1970. You can also use strings as long as they are in ISO 8601 format. Timedeltas have a single unit. Can also create them by subtracting two datetime64 objects. Pandas timestamp and timedelta build much more functionality on top of numpy. A pandas timestamp is a moment in time very similar to a datetime but with much more functionality. You can construct them with either pd.timestamp or pd.to_datetime. pd.to_datetime works very similarly, with a few more options, and can convert a list of strings into timestamps. Converting Python datetime to datetime64 and timestamp. Converting numpy datetime64 to datetime and timestamp. Convert to timestamp. Convert from timestamp to datetime and datetime64. This is quite easy as pandas timestamps are very powerful.
If you want to see more, please consider subscribing.